Okay, welcome. I know this is our first. I hope you find this to be an interesting topic, a little bit intriguing. We're going to be looking at, and you saw the title, How to Collaborate Using Technology in what I call the post-email era. And by post-email era, I mean the era where, frankly, email's failing us because we're so buried in emails. Actually, I think I will mute, just so we have a little bit of background. I'll open up the line from time to time, and certainly at any time, any of you can ask a question if you want. But, we're so buried in emails. And so administrators and office staff are looking for alternative ways to communicate with one another. I know some use text messages, but even that's kind of cumbersome. So I'm going to try to share with you kind of a little bit of an alternative approach that, frankly, we couldn't have done maybe 4 or 5 years ago because the technology really wasn't there, but it really is there today. So I am going to try to show you this in both the Google platform and in Microsoft. I have clients doing both. They're a little bit different. So you may see a little bit of a difference between the two. There are pros and cons with each. So maybe that's the first question you can answer for me. How many of you work with Google, or have districts that are moving in the direction of Google? And how many of you are in what we call Office 365, Microsoft districts? That might be helpful. That's interesting. So we may primarily stick to the Google. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So you're going the other way. Oh, okay. All right. So I am going to show it to you in both. I'll probably put a bigger emphasis on the Google approach, but you certainly can do it with both. So let me actually start with the basic idea here, because I can see we're really definitely more dominant in Google. So, and I'm just gonna push through these slides quick. And what I'm going to do is some of it I have laid out in slides to show it to you, but then we're actually going to look at the application. I'm going to take you into Google. I'm not just going to show you slides. So let me just ask an interesting question. We'll start with something simple. Okay. Well, I'm assuming that you all have to take messages for somebody, either for an administrator or for other people in your office. So the question I have is, how do you take those messages? Do you take them on paper? Do you send them by email? Do you text message to someone? Now, what I heard when I did this yesterday, because I did it with a group in Texas, is some of them said, well, I write it on paper, but then I'm emailing it to the administrator. So just give me an idea what you do, okay? Oh, okay. All right. So, Lisa, I see you keep trying to be the presenter. I think you're hitting the wrong thing. So you want to hit the, the comment. Okay. All right. So, Christina, you're the one that's interesting because it may be that you're already doing what I'm going to suggest. Okay. Which would be great because then you really can share how it's working. Okay. So I want to suggest that there are problems with all of that. And in particular with the email. Well, the problem with just doing a paper message is the person really can't respond to it until they get back. And the problem with email is that administrators are buried in emails. So unless they're really good at filtering, which most people are not that great at, it's easy for some messages to get lost, So I want to suggest an alternative approach, which again, based on what I just saw from Christine, seems like you're doing it. Okay, all right, and really, how we'll elaborate on that. So let me just show you what that looks like and give you an idea. And again, you can do this in Google or Microsoft Since most of you are in Google, I'm going to start with Google, which was my plan anyway. And then if we've got a couple of people in Microsoft, I have one district near where I am, which the folks in Westchester will know the name of. It's White Plains, and they're actually doing this in Microsoft, using the Microsoft approach, because they're a Microsoft district. But anyway, hold on one second. So in order to be able to do what I'm suggesting in Google, it's really two applications. It's Google Forms and Google Sheets. So we're actually going to start with, and then in Office 365 it would be OneNote, okay? So let me go actually to how you do this, and I'm going to take you through the slides first, and then I'll actually show you what to do, okay? And it will actually go into Google. But the first thing that you want to do is create a telephone message, a form, as a telephone message using Google Forms, okay? And once you have the telephone message, what you can do with it, and this is really where it gets cool, you can certainly fill out the message on your desktop if you happen to be at your desktop. And a really cool thing is to put the telephone message on your phone. Now, I know some people are prickly about this. They don't want to use their personal phone. That's certainly up to you. But a lot of the districts I'm working with, where they are using the Google approach, they are putting it on their phones, okay? And there's no issue with record keeping with your phone, because the phone is really just a browser for the input. The input is actually going into your Google Documents. There's really nothing in your phone that's being kept in your phone other than the input form. It's the same as filling it out. But it's just sometimes more convenient, because think about how many times you're working, and if you have to take a message, you don't want to have to, go out of the screen you're at. So it may be easier to do on your phone. So I'm going to just take you through how you do this once you've created the form on your phone. And again, it's easier for me to show you this in slides. So the first thing you do is you're going to email yourself the form. And again, when I go into Google Forms, I'll actually show you how you do that. You basically just send the form to yourself, to whatever email address you use on your computer. And then once you do that, you want to open it up. So you're basically opening up the form, and on the bottom, unfortunately, I don't think I might be able to do this. Well, you'll see it. It doesn't really work. But if you look on the very bottom, you'll see a little thing that looks like a square. This is on an iPhone. By the way, Friday, I don't own an Android phone. I should ask you that, by the way. How many of you have an iPhone? How many of you have an Android phone? Okay. So unfortunately, I can't show you how to do it on Android because I don't have one. But I did Friday. I did it. You should be able to see everyone's responses. Make sure, Kim, that you have it set for everyone on top when you're looking. And I'll just basically tell you what they are anyway. So it's about 50-50. So I can tell you can do this on an Android. I just don't have pictures for it. It took me exactly 2 seconds to find it on the Android. So it works pretty much the same way. Okay? So what you're going to do, in fact, I think it's still on the bottom. So you're going to open it up in your browser, basically, which is going to load just by doing the link. Then you're going to go to the bottom, and you're going to see this square box. It actually looks the same on the Android. It's the same icon. Okay? And then once you do that, I have a little bit of a quick video I developed on this, and just to show you what it kind of looks like, and I'll show you some slides. So that's the link. You're then going to click it. It's going to open up on your phone. You're going to go to the bottom. It's going to open up, and you're going to go to the thing that says Home Screen. It's going to say, do you want to add it to your phone? And at that point, it's going to put it on your phone. Now, if you're doing more than one, they're all going to look the same, but they can have different wording underneath. We actually developed 2 of them yesterday, and the person just put them on a different screen. They put one on the first screen and another on the second. But that's basically how you do it. And again, I can kind of just show it to you here, too. So what you're going to do is you're going to put it on your home screen. Actually, can you guys hold on a second? iPad is dying, and I wanna be able to monitor, so I'm gonna grab my other one. And I'm going to try to multitask while I do this, so I'll talk as we go along, but just so I can load this up. But even though I have it plugged in, it's shouldn't take me more than about a second to do this. All right, so no. There we go. I just switched from one device to the other, just so I can read the chats. Okay, so once you do that, it's going to ask, do you want to add it, and then it's going to go on your home screen. And at that point, anytime you want to access it, now you can certainly access from the link to the email, but this is so much easier. Okay, and that's basically it. So I'm going to, just for a moment, I'm going to go out of here, and we're actually going to go into Google. Okay, and I'm going to show you how you do these pieces. So the first piece would be in Google Forms. And by the way, let me ask you, how many of you have used Google Forms at all? Anyone have experience with Google Forms? Okay. All right. All right, so if you have, then I really can go quick on this one because this is not a complicated form. Okay? So I'm going to first show you one that I already have. Okay? So it's basically just a little telephone message pad form, right? With name, title, organization. So if you're going to start one of these from scratch, and I just start a quick one because it doesn't really take very long to show you how to do this. All right. I just have to do one quick change. I don't want any collecting an email here. Okay. So I'm just going to call this, fake pad. And by the way, whenever you create this, for people a little less experienced, first thing you want to do with any Google document is name it first. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of untitled documents. And then we're just going to create a very simple form. I may not even finish all of it here because I have one already. So my first question, name. By the way, it's very smart. It could figure out that name is a one-liner. And then title. And then organization, because some of the calls could be external. And I guess you'd need the phone number. And in some cases, email address. And again, it's really smart. It can actually figure out just by what you're typing. And then message, which would be a paragraph, and it's smart enough. There you go. There's your form, right? So now if you want to make the form a little prettier, you could change the color because you're the one that's got to look at this all the time. Or you could go down to here. What I like is other because I don't like things that are really hokey. I like, So I kind of like this one, linen. And there we go. I've got my beautiful form, my input form. And then at that point, actually I've got an extra question here I want to get rid of. And then at that point, to fill it out, I just can go to the eyeball even and just fill it out. Okay? So I have one already done because it's linked. So I want to show you what happened. So I had filled a few of these out. I'll just fill out one more, right? Just really quick. And now what I do is I hit submit. Now we're going to look, as you know, there's kind of like an input mode and there's a design mode. So if I go into the design mode, I have all of my messages. But the real magic here is this little green icon. Now I had already done it for this one. So I'm actually going to take you back to the one we just did before. No, I won't. Yeah. So I did it already, so it's going to take you right to it. But typically what would happen is the first time it will ask you, what do you want to name your document? And then at that point, here are your phone messages. Now, there's a couple of things that are really cool about this. If you noticed, when we took the message, I didn't have to put the date or time, or I didn't put the date or time, which would be typical things you would put on a message pad. But I don't have to do it because Google Forms ports, by the way, just to describe what happened here, it ports the information in real time into Google Sheets. So every time a new telephone message is created, it's just going to automatically upload. And in fact, the one I just did is down on the bottom. You can actually see it, okay? And that it was done today, in the time, okay? I don't know why the time is wrong. It must be like set for a different time period. But anyway, they work. You do get accurate information on the call. Now, you have the ability at this point to create additional columns. So normally what we have is, a comment column where all the administrator is really going to look at is this form. They're not actually going to look at the individual messages. They're going to look at this form. And then there's an ability to communicate back and forth between the secretary and the administrator. So he can say something like, tell him I died, or I went into the witness protection program, or more practically, he'll say, can you let them know that I'll call them tomorrow. And so there's two-way communication between you and the administrator, and it's all in one place. Now, what we do is a custom, so you know if an item is done, and it's up to you how you want to handle this. You can decide you're going to do the whole line, and then you just go up and you can just put a strike through it, and that tells me it was resolved. Or maybe I'll be a little lazier. I'll just do it on the timestamp, the strike through. And so here we have a system for us to be able to communicate back and forth. So let me just stop for a minute. Any thoughts? Anything you want to see again? And any opinion you have on it. What do you think? Maybe I'll open the line up just for a minute. In case anybody. Hey, any thoughts on that? What do you think? Okay, is there a way to connect to an existing? Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay? So, for example, if you have, and I would have to show you this on the one that we just created, the new one, so I'll show you that. Okay. Not the one that I had already, the fake one. Okay, so on the fake one, which only has, I think, one message, one response, maybe not even one. Did I even fill out one? No. Let me at least fill out one, okay? And I'll just kind of gibberishy it. It doesn't really matter what I'm putting here. And I'm not even sure I need this, but just so you see, what's going on here. Okay, so when you go to the thing for the spreadsheet, it asks, do you want to create a new spreadsheet or do you want to select an existing spreadsheet? So if you select an existing spreadsheet, okay, it will add a tab at that spreadsheet, be the most left-hand tab. Now, once it puts it there, you can move it over. But yes, you could, in fact, have a sheet that actually ports from multiple Google Forms, different Google Forms. Okay. So there are a couple of examples in which I've done that. On the question of duplicating, you can duplicate, but the real question is not sure you can duplicate and have it work in real time. In real time in which they're both going to update. Do you follow what I mean? So you can always make a duplicate of a form, but I'm not sure that it's, the duplicate is also going to update. They're all going to stay in sync. And so maybe you can tell me why you would want to do that. Is it because you take messages from more than one person? Because if you were doing that, I'd say create multiple, input sheets. It is for the limitations, but you certainly can make a duplicate. Okay. Yeah, I'm just saying that. In other words, it really is only going to port to one of them, so you'd have to constantly be updating. Another thing that you can do, and this is just, as a part of this, what happens? I end up loading so many of these things, these tabs. So let me take a couple down. So here. I may have the Google Sheet again. I have some other stuff I want to show you on this. All right. All right. So, okay, maybe I'll mute again. It's getting a little noisy. Since you're all chatting. Okay, so yes, you can absolutely make a copy of this. You can even download it into, into Excel, even for record keeping, or download it as a PDF to keep a copy of it. So one of the questions happens is, what happens, after time? What do you do? Well, maybe you want to have a second tab that you're going to create. And again, you can have as many tabs as you want, and that's old messages. So what you're basically going to do is, at some point, you're going to take a few of these that you feel like you don't need anymore, and you could basically cut them, and then paste them into the the other sheet, and kind of have them as, last time I had this, it didn't work either. Yeah, it's kind of tricky. That should work. Yeah. I did this yesterday. I had a little problem, but you definitely can do it. Okay. And, where you're going to actually copy it into the other sheet so you can get rid of them, so you're not buried in all the old email, all the old messages. This is messing up on me. Let me reload this. This exact same thing happened yesterday. I should have known better. I shouldn't have done it. I think it's because I have too many things loaded up here. All right, yeah, so I'm good. All right, so let me stop. Any questions so far? You like it? Now, there's a couple of things I didn't show you yet, okay? And there are questions you didn't ask, but that there are questions that people frequently ask me. One of the benefits of doing this a lot is, I get the questions from different groups. So one question that I get a lot is, well, when a new message comes, is the administrator alerted? And the answer is no, okay? Nor would I really want that, because if you think about it, if they get alerted for every email, then we're again buried in emails. So we don't really want them to be alerted, but what if you've got an administrator, and I'm not saying any of your administrators would be this way, but let's say you've got an administrator just bad, and he doesn't look at his sheet, So you kind of want to send them a message, hey, look at your sheet, okay? So the first thing you have to do to be able to do that is first, which is something you would have done anyway, you have to share it with somebody. Now, I'm purposely only going to share it with myself. Otherwise, somebody's going to be calling me and saying, what's going on here? Okay? So I already had shared this with myself, okay? So once you share it with yourself, if you go to File, you'll see Email Collaborators. And by the way, if I have multiple people, I could choose who I'm going to send the email to. So if, for example, if you were doing this for a guidance department, you only have one person who's bad. By the way, you could sort these by people, Maybe I only want to email him or her. But in this case, there's only one collaborator. I could send them a message. Hey, look at your, we got a lot of there were a lot of messages this morning. Whatever you want to do diplomatically, let the person know they have to look at them. And then send it. And then what that's going to do is that's going to send an email with the link. And if they hit the link, that's going to open up this form. Now, if you are on an Android phone, an administrator's on the Android phone, they can open this up. There's an app for it. Same thing with the iPhone or an iPad. If they're on any kind of a desktop, it'll open up into the browser, usually into Chrome. But they can do it on a mobile device. They can look at this on their phone, okay? So a little squishy on a small phone, but the phones are getting bigger. So they definitely can do that, view this. And they will get an email with a link. That link is going to take them to the top of the form. But one of the questions I get asked is, what if there's a real 4-alarm fire here? What if instead of this message saying, call me, this was a message from my boss, a superintendent, and he, and I'm not saying this would really happen, he's hopping mad and wants you calling right away. So maybe there's like 80 messages here. You don't want your administrator to kind of miss it. So what you can do, a lot of people don't know this. I think a lot of people know about sharing and even about emailing Collaborator, but there's a little trick. We'll find out if any of you knew it. Maybe the real pros did. If you go to comments and you put in a plus sign, you can assign a comment to somebody. Now, what happens is when I hit assign, notice it has the email address, I can then write additional things, okay? And then I send it. Now, the problem here is I had sent it to an email account that's not a Gmail account, but that's not going to be an internal issue. It doesn't matter. It'll actually work. So what's going to happen now is, and I will tell you, sometimes these are delayed by about 5 or 6 minutes because they go into some sort of a queue. But the administrator will get another email. But the difference is this email will take them right to that spot, okay, that highlighted cell or cells. So they can't really miss it. And at that point, they can still make a comment to you or respond to it. So you have an ability to alert the person to one particular message, all without having to use Gmail or Outlook, all through the document. So I'll stop again. Any questions so far? How many of you like it? How many of you think you'd like to try it? No and yes? Which one? Oh, you do use the comment. Do you use the comment with a plus, Kristen? Have you known about that? Okay, good. All right. Well, you don't have to. Well, first of all, the decision is entirely yours. You have to have an administrator that likes this approach, but I have a number of them that really do. Okay? So, yeah, you can right-click and add a comment. You can do that as well. However, the key is the plus. So you can certainly go, and add a comment this way. I believe it's down here. But the real trick here is the plus. By the way, you can do it another way as well. You can say, he is hopping mad, and instead of doing a plus, do an at. And that will also open up to the person. So it's a question of, I usually use a plus, but you can do either one. Okay? Either a plus or an at. And then, again, that gets assigned. All right? And yes, I probably would do both, actually. And yeah, if it was a superintendent, I would do that as well. But I think my point was that maybe a call to an upset parent, and I don't want it just sitting in a sea of emails. I want to have the ability to have the administrator really see that one item. So if they're generally just not looking at their emails, I'll do it through Email Collaborator. If it's something really that is super important, I want to be able to focus their attention just on that one spot, then I'll use the plus and assign. Okay. By the way, there are other uses of plus and assign. I work with a facilities director, and he has meetings, like team meetings, with his head custodians and his maintenance supervisor. And they go over punch list items, things that need to be done at the meeting. And then what he does after is he assigns them to the particular person. So they all have the shared, the document in the meeting they share. It's their common, punch list items for the month. But then he actually has them assigned, and they are expected to comment back. Most of the time the answer is, it's been done, or I'm taking care of it. But the point is, he just goes down the line and assigns this one to this one to that one. So, so it can be used in other ways. Everybody good with that? Yes, you can always reassign a sheet. So, for example, even though I had one already, I have to look at how you do this. I know there's a way. Let me look over here. Where I can unlink the form to the current sheet and then put it into a different sheet. Okay? So I could, for example, create a different one each month. All right? Yes, the plus works with docs and the at works with docs. However, you have to highlight the text. See, because when you're working with it in Google Sheets, you've got your you have the cells. So all you have to do is highlight the cell. But if you're going to do it in docs, you have to highlight the text. So if, for example, it was a paragraph, you would highlight the paragraph or the end of the paragraph. So it knows where to go. But yes, you absolutely can do that. Okay? And by the way, all the collaborative stuff, the sharing the document, all of that absolutely works in Google Docs. Okay? So I wasn't planning to do Google Docs today, but yes, it does. Okay. So this is kind of level one that we've talked about so far, and that is telephone messages, and that's usually the core of this. But I want to go a little bit further with what you can do using this collaborative approach. So I kind of got the idea because I was brought in to work with somebody locally here in New York, where it was a business administrator and her secretary, very competent secretary, but they were really struggling. First of all, she was fairly new, not new to being a secretary, new to business office, and this is a complicated job that she had. So can you hold on 1 second? Can you hear me? I want to make sure I'm back. Yes. Okay. So she has a really complicated job, and so hold on again, 1 second. Once again, I want to make sure. Can you hear me? Yeah, he was just going to keep ringing and ringing. Okay. All right. So, So to go back to my story again. So they were kind of struggling. And they were struggling not just with telephone messages. They were struggling with communication and goals and projects. And I said, I really got this good idea. Let's do this as a shared document. Now, I didn't do it in Google. I ended up doing it in OneNote. I'm going to show you that to you, even though most of you don't use it. But you could do the same thing in Google. So I've created a Google version of this. And I have a couple of districts that are now using it. So the first thing is a telephone message pad, and that is linked to that's going to be linked to a form. But we don't have to be limited to that. We could have a to-do list. So, for example, I have a situation. The secretary has they have like a little to-do list. She has a to-do list, and I didn't really fill one out and make a fake form here. You can have various items, finish budget, etc. And what would happen is that one of the things she was struggling with is what order to do these things. So her boss, who shares this form, would order them. Because what was happening is a little frustration between them over priorities. So she would order them, and that would give the secretary a little bit of clearer picture of where the priorities were. And then in addition, the boss was adding items, adding them on the bottom. So they were able to do almost like a pre-workday conference through a virtual document that they were sharing. Okay, so let me stop there. Any questions on that? And again, it's just a simple concept. I could take you through this form. So this is just a completed, and then these are just some, priorities. And then the boss would say, for 6 items, she would put down the order so that the secretary kind of felt a little more comfortable in knowing what the priorities were. So I'll stop. Questions? Okay, so now we go to the next thing. She was new to the job. It's a very complicated job, and again, not new to office work, but very complicated job working for this, it's a very large district, and her boss has a wide span of control, and so she had a ton of questions that were coming up about procedures. So instead of calling the administrator all the time, we had a little question form. And she would put any of the questions she had for her boss in the question form. So when the boss had a free minute, she would go in and she'd answer the questions. In some cases saying, let's talk about it tomorrow or whatever. But if it was something she could just clarify out, do I need approval from this person before I do this? And then they just had a comment box next to it where she would then, respond to the questions. So again, they didn't have to wait. And this administrator, she was pretty good. Whenever she get a quick break between meetings, she would go into her form, and look. And then beyond that, this is still a work in progress, so I don't really have anything to show you. But they had a couple of ongoing projects they're working on, and we've been talking about including tabs for those projects. So you don't necessarily have to limit this to just telephone messages. You could really have this be almost the one, and that's really what I wanted to talk about in the post, collaborative email. Is there a way that we really can use this as a mechanism to communicate, on a lot of different things, not just telephone messages? So again, I'm going to stop. Any questions? Okay, that's actually pretty cool. Okay. Similar. Okay, good. Good. Any questions? Anything you want to ask? Okay, that's good. All right. That's a good thing. Okay, so I want to yep, and you certainly can do that as well. In fact, I'm coming. I'll be in the Gulf Coast on Monday. Because they're doing a conference for office staff in Escambia County schools. And I got I got today all the information, including the Google map, as a Google Doc. Okay? So that was really great. All right, so I want to show you one more form, since we have time. That is just an idea for a form. Now, this one is not for collaboration. This is strictly for you. It's a personal form, okay? But it's one, actually, that I have a couple of administrators using as well, and they really like it. This is a form you absolutely would want on your phone, okay? So I'll show it to you. We'll actually create it. Again, I'm not doing anything really deep here. These are more, ways of using fairly simple tools within Google. We haven't really delved deep into the complicated stuff here, but some fairly simple tools to do some practical things for you. So one of my favorites is what I call memo to self. Now I have one created already, but we could create one from scratch, okay? And then I'll show you the one I have created. So I'm going to call it memo to self. So since I'll stick to what I did before, what happens when people tap you on the shoulder and ask you to do something, or you get a phone call and you've got to handle something? Someone asks you to look into something. Where do you write that? Where do you put that down? You know, how do you notate that? Do you put that on a little piece of paper and throw it on your desk? You know, how do you keep track of it? And I know some people use Google Keep, but I'm just curious of what do you do with that? Honestly, we'll do a little confession moment. What do you do with it? Okay, all right. So I want to suggest an alternative to that, okay? So here's the alternative. You create a memo to self. Now, by the way, it can either be a 2-question form or a 3-question form, depending on how you do it, okay? So the first question is, like, who? Who's asking you for this information? So you're not going to write every single person, but if you tend to regularly deal with certain people, let's say the superintendent, don't count on my spelling, director, principal, I don't know, assistant soup, I get very self-conscious when we use this. Okay, there we go. All right, and by the way, if you do as a multiple choice, you can have another. Okay, and then the only other question I have is, it's just item or memo or whatever you want to do. Okay, and I usually do that as a paragraph, just in case I need more space. So that's my whole form, right? And again, I already showed you how you can put this on your phone. So you get a request from somebody, right? You put, okay, it's a request from the superintendent. Look into this. There you go. Boom. And then you get another one from the principal, director, need copy of schedule. Boom. And then what did we already learn when you have forms? You can always port them to a spreadsheet. And again, I didn't show you this before, but you can create a new spreadsheet and call it anything you want. You could put it in an existing sheet if you want to keep everything in one main sheet. Here I'm just going to create a different sheet. And there you go. It's going to take a second. We've got our what? Memo to self. So these are all my reminders. All my notes are in one place. No little pieces of paper, no notebook. All here. Okay? And I can't forget them. Okay. So now, if it's a small number of people, you can have an other, because with multiple choice you can have another. Okay. So I could write, Mary Jones. Okay. And write. And submit that, and have an other. And then that's going to show up on my phone, okay? If you want to do a larger list of people, then instead of selecting multiple choice, you don't even have to redo this. All you have to do is go to your form. And instead select drop-down. Now, the only problem with drop-down is drop-down does not allow an other. So if it's somebody else, you're going to have, another line for that person, like other person. And now it's pretty much the same form, except that now I can have a drop-down, and I could have 20 people, on this drop-down list. I could have If it's a small enough school, you could pretty much have the whole school, okay? And then if it's somebody who doesn't fit, you just put their, you would just put their name. And the others are going to show up in a different column, but you're still going to see what they are, and then the memo is going to be really the same. Okay? Got it? By the way, I'm not even sure what's going to happen when I do this since I updated the form. Let's see. Where it's going to put it, I'm just curious. Yeah, just put it at the end, But had you created the form first, it would have put it here. Okay? Any questions? So here, and then again, this could go on your phone. So I have a director of facilities that has 2 of these type of forms that he has on his phone. He doesn't have the telephone messages on the phone because he doesn't take telephone messages, but he has one memo to self because he's constantly walking down the hallway and people are asking him about stuff, or he's getting a phone call while he's out and about. And what he used to have before was just like a notepad with him, and then you have to pull it out. It's so much easier. He has his phone with him all the time, just to pull it up on his phone. So the other form he created, which I'm not going to show you, is really a simple form. Since he is a facilities director, he also has a form, and it's just a three-question form. It just says building, location, and item. So if he's walking around the building and he sees, say, water damage on the ceiling tile or something he has to ask about, maybe look at whether or not we should replace the flooring somewhere, anything that, he's looking at and he thinks, something needs to be addressed, he'll just make a note of it. And then when he gets back to the office, he's got all these items, and then you have an ability to sort them. He'll sort them by building, and then in some cases ask staff members to follow up on them. So any questions on that? Now, is there anybody that doesn't use Google that's in Microsoft? Because I do want to at least show you a Microsoft approach. Okay? Nope. Yes? No? Okay, so you could certainly do this in Excel. Now, the only thing that you can't do in Excel, well, you certainly can't do it on a Mac, which is what I'm on, okay? But you certainly can do the same setup in Excel, and this is Excel. The only thing is you'd have to actually write the messages here. If you do it on a PC, there's an ability to pull up a little, like, vertical input form that looks the same and that'll populate. You can do that. But you're not going to be able to put it on your phone, and you're not going to be able to port it, and it doesn't do timestamps. So that's a little bit of a negative, okay? But, if you didn't have Google, you could do this, and Excel can be shared as well. It has collaborative tools. So you can share an Excel document now. You never used to be able to, but now you can. So that's one approach. I personally don't like this because if you are going to be in the Microsoft environment, we have OneNote, which looks so beautiful. So I'm going to show you this very same thing in OneNote. So this is now OneNote, okay? So OneNote is a notebook program. And so you create a shared notebook, and a notebook can be shared with multiple people. It updates in real time, okay? And it's a little bit different in the way it's laid out, but it really is pretty much the same thing. So you have a major notebook. It's kind of one basic note, and then you can add pages to the note, which is kind of like tabs. So here we have and you can put a little spreadsheet version in. One of the options is to input. You can insert, like a little spreadsheet, okay, like a table. So here is my, OneDrive version of the same thing. So here are the telephone messages. Unfortunately, you can't fill out the form. You got to fill them out, here and put the date and time. But they are, they do update in real time. Here's a to-do list, which is so pretty. I like it, so beautiful. Okay, OneNote is nice looking. Okay, and then here's our questions. And here's, the memo back to the assistant where where the boss just puts a memo to the administrative assistant. So here you go. Whether you're in Google or whether you're in a Microsoft environment, you really can do this. I really like Google Forms, and I like the way it ports, so that's my preference. I would say that I like the Google approach better because I like the ability, in the case of the telephone messages, to be able to fill it out in a form, particularly on my phone. So I like that. From an aesthetic point of view, the Microsoft is prettier. Okay, this OneNote is prettier. The district I initially did this for is doing the OneNote, and it's working out really well. I mean, it's a little bit harder because she's mostly at her desk, so she fills out the phone messages just as a line, and I haven't heard really any complaints. And it is kind of more aesthetically pleasing. But, you know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. One of the things I just, as a view, I really am reluctant to suggest to a client they go outside of the environment in their district, because I run into all kinds of snafus. So if you're generally a Google district, you know, I'd recommend you kind of try to stick to Google unless it can't do it, you know. And if you're in Microsoft, you know, you stick to Microsoft. Now, Microsoft does have a form. If you have a school Office 365, I've had some problems with it. It's still not quite ready for prime time, but it's coming. So when it finally comes, I think what you're going to find, and I know I'm talking a lot, but you know, these two applications are competing in a similar space, and they're looking at each other, and so each one is trying to build on the benefits of the other. Microsoft is definitely more powerful. Like Microsoft, you know, Word is much more powerful than Google. And there were things that were real limitations on Google, but every time I turn around, Google is adding them. And in fact, since we have about 5 minutes, I can show you an example of one that just was done this week. Okay? Do you mind? All right, we'll go to Google Docs. By the way, I discovered this yesterday. I was in the middle of doing training. I was going over Google Docs, and I said, Google can't do this, and it could. Okay? So this is like, as, you know, really, these are changes that took place really recently. Like I would say within the last couple of, well, this first one within the last year, this second one within the last couple of weeks. Okay? So if you're familiar, and this assumes you even knew this to begin with. So if you were familiar with Microsoft Word, you knew that you could do, you know, if you had a list here that said 12, 14, you could do 13 as a font size. What a lot of people did not know, maybe I can. What a lot of people did not know is that you could do a half a font. Now, a year ago, you could do a half a font in Docs, but you couldn't do a half a font in Google. It would only do whole fonts. So within the last year, they changed it probably to compete, you know. So why would you want a half a font? Well, let's say that you're doing a letter, it's at 12, which is a common size, and all of a sudden, I don't know about you, but I hate this. Don't you hate it when you get to the bottom of, let's say it's a document, and you just have one line that goes off onto the next page? Do you hate that as much as me? Okay. So, you know what I'm saying, right? You know, you just can't quite fit it on the page. So what I'll sometimes do, and I could do in Google, I know I'm getting tongue-tied here, I could do in Office, in Word, and couldn't do in Google before, was to do a half a font. So a half a font change. So instead of doing 12, I would do 11.5. Probably not noticeable to the someone reading, but enough to put an extra line or two on the bottom. So I dropped it a half a font in size. So recently they added that. Another thing that you could do, and this is the other one I'm going to show you, okay? So if you go into line spacing, you know, you see single, 1.15, but you can actually go to custom spacing, and you could put in anything you want. So you could do 1.123, and if you notice, as I'm doing that, it's making, I think you can see this on the screen, it's making the space between the lines a little larger, which, by the way, definitely improves readability. So if you have a small document, it's nice to kind of fill it out, give a little extra space. Not make it look like double space, but maybe add 1.1, 1.2. Now, what you could do in Microsoft is you could also use that to go below 1. So once again, if you were running tight on space, you could go 0.9, say 0.96. That's 96%. It's a 4% difference in the spacing. So it's really very little. But, you know, on a whole page, that could get you an extra line. So I just did this, and it worked. 2 weeks ago, it wouldn't have worked. It would have said you have to be, it would only do it above 1, but it wouldn't go to below. So they recently updated that, and now you're able to do that. So that's an example of, you know, Google trying to compete with some common characteristics. Somebody must have made the complaint that, you know, why can't we have that capabilities, and they retooled it so it's able to do that. And that's actually a really handy tool, particularly if you're doing newsletters or you're trying to fit something on one page that you have to print. Okay, so we're just about to wrap up. Any quick questions, comments? How many of you found this helpful today? So I have no doubt, you know, that now that I've kind of put you on track to this, that you're going to really come up with you know, you're going to come up with your own innovations around this. So I was hoping to, you know, embed the concept and the idea, and then you'll run with it. But I'm telling you, it made me a hero because it really, in the case of a couple of clients, they are loving it, you know. And it just was not something you could have done 5 or 6 years ago because the tech wasn't available. So, and I'm sure you can think about ways that you can collaborate with documents with others besides just a boss and administrator, including Teams, but this is a kind of a cool one. Okay? All right, so thank you, everybody. I hope to see you next month. I assume I'll see you next month. And thanks again. Okay? And I record all of those. For those of you who are new, they get recorded. So, you know, so I'll have a copy in case you forget any of it. But it's pretty simple. Okay? Thanks again.